Welcome to This Explainer. Now, if you're navigating college life right now, you already know exactly how exhausting the day-to-day grind can be. But, I'm not just talking about those brutal late-night study sessions or the literal mountain of reading assignments. No, I'm talking about something way more internal, the dreaded social hangover. You know the feeling? That deeply draining experience where you're just staring at your dorm ceiling at 1 a.m., literally replaying every single conversation you had that day. What you said, what they meant, why you laughed just a little too loud at a joke that, let's be honest, wasn't even funny. Well, it turns out psychology says this exhaustion actually means a whole lot more than you might think.
Have you ever had this exact thought just flash through your mind the second after you speak up in a massive dead silent lecture hall? Or, oh man, maybe right after talking to a crush at a super crowded party? You walk away, your heart's beating a little fast, and boom, did I make it awkward? Listen, if you do this, you are definitely not alone. It is pretty much a universal college experience. So today, we're going to decode exactly what's happening in your head when you spiral like this, breaking down these exhausting social habits step by step.
Okay, let's dive into this. We'll be looking at the post-conversation replay, the trap of silence, the habit of fearing the worst, the intense need for closure, and finally, a really surprising reveal about why your brain does all of this in the first place.
So starting off with the post-conversation replay, or the immediate aftermath. This usually kicks in the exact second you walk away from a chat and head back to your dorm.
It's fascinating to see the stark contrast in how different brains process social exits. For a lot of people, their brain just registers a simple goodbye, and boom, they move on without a second thought. But for the overthinker? Oh no. The mind absolutely refuses to let it go. It instantly starts scanning for possible social mistakes. Your brain goes into full overdrive. Wait, did my tone sound weird? Did I say way too much? Was I supposed to wave there? It's literally like your mind is running a frantic, full-scale security check to see if you committed some social error without even realizing it.
But why do we actually do this? Well, psychology tells us that replaying these talks is really just your brain's desperate attempt to regain control over the past. I mean, think about it. Once a conversation is over, it's locked in. It's done. You can't change it, but the mind revisits it anyway, imagining better responses or entirely different reactions. This mental gymnastics creates this false sense of control over a situation that's already completely finished. You can't magically rewind time to sound cooler, but your brain acts like, hey, if I just think about this hard enough, maybe I can fix it.
Next up is the trap of silence, where doing nothing is actually doing something. This brings us right into the paranoia phase, focusing on the sheer anxiety of digital communication.
If you're an overthinker, you understand one fundamental truth. Words can easily be taken differently. And that's the core fear at play here, this deep, agonizing fear of being misunderstood. Let's say you send a slightly risky text to a friend, or maybe a really carefully worded email to a strict professor asking for an extension. Almost immediately, you start wondering exactly how you sounded. You think, maybe my tone felt off, or what if they took that the wrong way? Because of this fear, incredibly simple exchanges, like getting a vague two-word text from your lab partner, end up staying in your mind for hours on end.
And watch just how quickly this builds. Minute 1, the text is sent. Everything is totally fine. But by minute 5, that delayed reply suddenly feels heavily loaded with meaning. You start wondering if maybe they're mad at you. And then by minute 15, even if they do reply, a super short response feels incredibly personal. Your brain notices these tiny changes so fast, and then it frantically tries to explain them. Why? Because uncertainty feels mentally uncomfortable. Your brain wants to resolve that discomfort ASAP, even if it means automatically assuming you did something wrong.
Which leads us to fearing the worst, or the mental spiral. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how your brain handles missing information.
Whenever the details of an interaction are unclear, your mind has a gap that it just has to fill. Notice how rarely the brain actually assumes a positive or even neutral outcome. A tiny fraction of the time, sure, you might think things are fine, but the vast majority of the time, overthinking minds fill that gap negatively. They assume the absolute worst right out of the gate. You start thinking, oh no, maybe they thought I sounded annoying, or I definitely upset someone when I posted that comment on the discussion board. Because of this negative gap filling, one perfectly harmless talk rapidly turns into an exhausting mental spiral.
Now we hit the need for closure, which is all about internalizing social moments. This really addresses why some college students just cannot seem to let things go, even hours after a basic group project meeting.
The reality is not everyone moves on from these interactions quickly. While some people can just brush things off effortlessly, overthinkers, they absorb every tiny detail. We're talking a lingering look across the classroom, a slight pause before someone answers a question, a subtle, sharp shift in tone,
Overthinkers deeply internalize these micro moments. These tiny little things stick with them. And that's exactly why everyday conversations can end up feeling so incredibly heavy to carry around all day. And because you internalize all those small details, your mind just generates an endless loop of questions. What do they mean? Why did they say it exactly like that? The human mind absolutely hates unfinished business. It's true. Psychologists even have a name for it, the Zeigarnik effect, which basically says we remember uncompleted or interrupted things way better than finished ones. So if an interaction feels unclear, your brain is just going to keep returning to it over and over. It desperately wants closure, so it loops endlessly, searching for an answer it might never actually get. And finally, the grand reveal. Your brain is actually protecting you. So let's just take a deep breath here. Let's step back from all that chaotic mental spiraling we've been talking about and look at a really grounding, comforting realization.
So, the crucial point is this. If you do this often, if you're constantly scanning for mistakes, fearing being misunderstood, obsessing over short texts, your mind isn't just busy. This exhausting habit? It isn't actually a flaw in your personality. You aren't just being weird or socially awkward. You aren't broken.
It is trying to protect you. That right there is the grand mic drop conclusion from psychology. All of this relentless mental investigation, the replaying, the gap-filling, the desperate search for certainty, it's simply your brain acting as a shield. It is trying its absolute best to keep you safe and secure in your complex social world. By analyzing literally everything, it hopes to prevent you from ever facing rejection or making a mistake.
So, knowing what we know now about why our brains actually do this, I want to leave you with a thought to reflect on. The next time you catch yourself overthinking an interaction, staring at that dorm ceiling and replaying a conversation for the 100th time, will you fight your brain or will you think it?